Well, once again, good morning. It is Sunday, May 24th, and we stand at Crossroads, the intersection of a number of significant days on the Christian liturgical calendar, the annual calendar of the United States, as well as an important anniversary in the history of this country. Liturgically, it is Pentecost Sunday, the 49th day after Easter, celebrating the event chronicled in our first inspirational reading from the Acts of the Apostles, commemorating the descent of the Holy Spirit upon the apostles of Jesus, as well as Mary and other followers of Christ, while they were in Jerusalem celebrating the Feast of Weeks. But more on that later. In terms of the annual calendar in the U.S., this is, of course, as we've already said, the Memorial Day weekend, as recognized in our prayer just a few moments ago, remembering the U.S. military personnel who died while serving in the U.S. Armed Forces. Memorial Day itself is observed on the last Monday of May, and the three-day weekend is also considered to be the unofficial beginning of summer and the kickoff of the backyard barbecue season here in the U.S. Genuinely, the formal and informal objectives and purposes and outcomes of Memorial Day and the Memorial Day weekend beautifully exemplify and celebrate the diverse ways that we honor our cherished freedoms, as well as those who have fought and died to defend them over time. And finally, if that's not enough in terms of intersections, in terms of the historical calendar of this country, we are rapidly running up to the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776, and its recognition of our God-given right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But more on that later, too. Now, just based on these fortuitous intersections of time, you might see why I chose this Sunday to break with a couple of recently established traditions that Reverend G and I have established here at the Santa Anita Church. Specifically, my message this morning is not a standalone sermon, as my Sunday talks usually are, because my Sunday talks normally serve as kind of an intellectual and spiritual palate cleanser, if you will, between Reverend Gina's always compelling and always inspiring sermon series. Instead, it is part 6 of her series on the cross. And this in itself is also a break with tradition, since her sermon series installments usually have 5 parts. So we are just throwing caution to the wind this week, going with the 6s. But surprisingly, I was inspired by Spirit to do a part 6 installment in her amazing series on the cross, even before I was aware of all the intersections that I just mentioned. Not surprisingly for me, anyway, the inspiration was triggered by a newly released song that I randomly heard 2 Fridays ago as I joyously walked along the base of the San Gabriel foothills in Sierra Madre, as I often do. The song, of course, was the amazing, quietly hopeful piece that we heard this morning as the soundtrack for our meditation, the bright side version of Peter Gabriel's I Won't Stand Down. And as the song finished, I was immediately inspired to speak this morning on a final symbolization of the cross, an extension of Reverend Gina's earlier message on living in the crossroads. And as we move closer to today, the necessity of expressing this message on this day was made even more obvious when I realized the other intersections that I mentioned just a couple of moments ago. Because our society and our global civilization stand at the intersection of multiple, overlapping crises and challenges: political, economic, social, cultural, and interpersonal. And in Western societies in particular, we have never been more connected technologically, with access to virtually all the world's wisdom at our fingertips, and yet we have never felt more disconnected, divided, and lonely. And unfortunately, the forces of technology, through the rise of AI and other recent innovations, seem poised to usher in an era of even more disruption, division, and disquiet. Peter Gabriel mentions it in his song directly. While the smartest minds on the planet have no human face. Even Pope Leo has discussed it. Ironically, on his page on the social media platform X. I mean, there is a certain irony there if you think about it. But here's what the pontiff states, and this is part of his latest papal encyclical that he just issued. He says, as evidenced by the unbridled promotion and implementation of technology at the expense of human dignity, we are experiencing an eclipse of the sense of what it means to be human. It is imperative to recover an understanding of the true meaning and grandeur of humanity as intended by God. And then his last line hits different, as my daughter would say. The person is not a system of algorithms. So in sum, each of us are standing at our own personal crossroads, attempting to successfully navigate the same overlapping challenges and senses of disquiet and discord. But it is my fervent belief that how we choose to walk and transcend our own personal crossroads can also influence and impact how we collectively traverse the global crossroads and vice versa. They are intimately interconnected. If we bring our best spirit-inspired selves to the journey, we can transform our own lives and the lives of all of our fellow humans. And to be clear, I am talking about a positive movement of growth, authenticity, and transformation. One of building up, not of tearing down. One of creating an upswell of unity, at one-ment, and spirit, that in the words of Peter Gabriel, slowly wears away the walls between us. But how do all of these seemingly disparate and disconnected ideas, remembrances, and anniversaries come together to align our personal crossroads with the global, to enable us to, quote, walk to a life we can believe in, as in the words of the song? Well, let's start with Pentecost. According to the Reverend Danny Bradfield, Pentecost is a reminder that God is always breaking down the barriers between us. On Pentecost, the Spirit broke down the barriers of nationality and language by giving the disciples the ability to speak in the languages of all those who had gathered in Jerusalem for the Pentecost festival. Throughout the rest of the New Testament, the Spirit continues breaking down barriers between Gentiles and Jews, men and women, slaves and free, and many other categories or types of divisions that divide humanity. And today, in many churches and in many ways, the work of breaking down the barriers that divide us continues as we continue following the lead of Spirit, unquote. And so it is, for this is the ongoing mission of the Sandia Church. We are not about perpetuating dogmatic divisions and otherizing. Instead, we can combine the diversity of gifts that each of us have cultivated over time, all inspired by Spirit, to achieve an everlasting mutual understanding, genuine oneness, by walking together in common purpose. In our second inspirational reading, Paul, well, that is, the other Paul, writes, "Now there are diversities of gifts, but there is only one Spirit. And there are diversities of ministries, but there is only one Lord. And there are diversities of power, but it is the one God who works all things in all men. But the manifestation of the Spirit is given to every man as to help him. For to one is given by the Spirit the word of wisdom, to another the word of knowledge by the same Spirit, to another faith by the same Spirit, to another gifts of healing by the same Spirit." And there is a lot of healing in this room right now. "To another the working of miracles, to another prophecy, to another the means to distinguish the true spirit to another different languages, to another the interpretation of languages. But all these gifts are wrought by that one and same Spirit, dividing to everyone severally as he will. So we all have myriad gifts to explore, discover, hone, and joyously express to ourselves and those we encounter in our daily round. And these individual gifts can combine to form a tidal wave of peaceful, positive transformation in the world. Each of you in this sanctuary, as well as all of those watching on Facebook Live right now, are incredibly gifted with the tools of individual and collective transformation. But are you aware of what these gifts might consist of for you, and how you may be routinely using them to benefit others without being consciously aware that you are even doing so? In my Facebook Live meditation this past Wednesday evening, I led our virtual congregation in a surprisingly poetic exercise to reflect upon and discover, or rediscover, the essence of ourselves that can act as the compass or GPS, there's that technology again, to guide us through our personal and global crossroads. I wholeheartedly encourage you to watch or re-watch the recording at the church's Facebook Live page, at the church's Facebook page, and work your way through the process of divining and expressing the best, most transformative parts of you in a 2 to 3 line, unrhymed poem. And definitely have a pen and paper handy when you do, to record your poem on the essence of your best self. And definitely include any insights that may have arisen for you as you reflected on your core strengths as a person during our musical meditation earlier this morning. Consider using your brief poem as a mantra or affirmation, repeating it to yourself throughout the day. Perhaps you could print copies of it and post it at your bedside table, on your bathroom mirror, in your workspace. But there are more intersections, more crossroads that we meet today. As I mentioned earlier, July 4th of this year is the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and thus the birth of the United States as an independent country. And if you think about it, this Memorial Day weekend can serve as a meaningful and relevant prelude to honoring and celebrating the essence of ourselves as a people, as a nation, as a country. As a political scientist with over 30 years, experiencing, researching, reflecting upon, and teaching American politics, government, society, and culture, I can assert with complete confidence that for many Americans, the Declaration of Independence is the most clear and cogent expression of the freedoms held by those living in the United States, even more so than the U.S. Constitution itself. In this founding document, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, yes, there actually were 2 authors of this document, even though you may have been taught in school that it was just good old TJ himself, right? Both authors unabashedly state the purpose of the creation of this new national experiment that became known as the United States. A union of states that sought to break away from our former colonial overlord, the British, to restore and protect our God-given natural rights that no one was supposed to diminish or eliminate, not even a king. For Madison and Jefferson, our basic natural rights include life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. An interesting choice, because they chose to leave out a natural right that was included by the British political philosopher who inspired these lines in the Declaration of Independence, John Locke. Locke originally references our fundamental natural rights as including property ownership, life, liberty, and property. Madison and Jefferson get rid of that, and they throw in the pursuit of happiness. And it's interesting because for so many of us, that last almost thrown in element, the pursuit of happiness, may be the most resonant of the three natural rights that they suggest: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Lord knows that the pursuit of happiness has become a major element of American culture, American popular culture, even American marketing and advertising. I think years ago about the rather interesting tagline that Cadillac used for a while in their commercials. They would end the commercial by saying, Cadillac, life, liberty, and the pursuit. Now, from this, some people might think, well, do I have a God-given natural right to a Cadillac? Pursuit of what? Well, I'm still waiting for my Cadillac. I don't know what. Anyway. But we fixate on this notion of the pursuit of happiness, and yet our own individual visions of what constitutes the pursuit of happiness are likely very different from the vision that Jefferson and Madison themselves had in mind when they wrote that word. Because they are not directly referring to individual happiness as the ultimate element of that natural right. Instead, they are referencing the concept of what we call public happiness, which refers to a commitment by citizens and government alike to work for the common good of everyone in society. Listen to that again. A commitment of citizens and government alike to work for the common good of everyone in society. Everyone, period, full stop. In the minds of the authors of the Declaration of Independence, individual happiness and prosperity is seen as a natural and inevitable outgrowth of this notion of public happiness that I just described. And in other words, this is just another way of saying that our personal crossroads are inextricably blended with our global crossroads. It all comes back to the same. Even two of the prominent founders of our country understood this in 1776. So in the end, then, the desired objectives that are embedded in the reading from Acts of the Apostles on Pentecost, from Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, in the Declaration of Independence, and even in Pope Francis' most recent encyclical, they're all virtually the same. The message is consistent. We can navigate our personal crossroads and our global crossroads to achieve and express our divine birthright of unity and at one-ment, and as a result, live lives of both public and personal happiness. Or as expressed by Ernest Holmes in our third inspirational reading, we can recognize and authentically live the reality of our unity and multiplicity. The stuff of which our human bodies are made is the same etheric substance from which all things are made. The one mind conceives all things. From unity, which is the one, back of all things, through the one law, which is the medium of all action, multiplicity is manifested. But the many never contradict the unity of the whole. When we realize that we are dealing with infinite intelligence and with an infinite law within this intelligence, we see that no limit should be placed upon the creative principle. The creative principle is the key, the blending of our personal crossroads and the global crossroads, the key to the achievement, the blending of both public happiness and personal happiness. All these intersections, all these crossroads, all come down to this powerful message on this day that is readily achievable by all of us, and something that many of you are no doubt already doing, whether you are consciously aware of it or not. So, beloveds, I wholeheartedly implore you to thoroughly discover and intentionally use your diverse gifts, inspired by Spirit, to transform your inner life and to inspire the lives of those around you. You can help to spur a positive, united traversing of the global crossroads, and in doing so, cool the angry heat and grow hearts and minds around the world that no army could defeat. And we won't stand down until there's something better showing on the ground. Lean in, stand up, and always remember, you are beloved. You are enough. You are not alone. Thank you. I love you.